Hello everyone, my name is Jason Ergang and this is Disobedient Minds. This week we'll be covering the fourth element of plot, setting. Every story needs a strong sense of place in order to draw us into the narrative. At its best, setting complements all the other elements of story. It can reinforce the theme, tell us about the characters, reflect the stages of plot, or reflect the narrative's conflict. Setting can be broken up into four categories: physical setting, geographical setting, cultural setting, and historical setting. As we study setting, we will be applying our notes to the crime drama Low Winter Sun, a gritty cop show set in and around Detroit. Now, without further ado, our lecture. The physical setting of a scene or story has to do with things like the time of day, weather, or whether the scene is indoors or outdoors. It's very easy for new scholars to mix physical setting up with geographical setting. Just remember this: physical setting is where the scene takes place in the world. Geographical setting is where the scene takes place on a map. Let's analyze the scene where the detectives discover the body of their corrupt coworker, Brendan McCann. What is the physical setting? Well, they're outdoors, in the daylight, standing near the waterfront they pulled Brendan's car out of. There's industrial centers, overgrown plant life, aging buildings, and so on. All these things make up the physical setting of the scene. Geographical setting has to do with the location of the scene or story on a map. What country or state does the story take place in? Is it in the city or the country? What neighborhood is the story occurring in? These are all questions answered by the geographical setting. This one's pretty easy for us. The geographical setting of Low Winter Sun is Detroit. We know this for a variety of reasons, but since we can recognize a lot of the landmarks in the opening and closing credits, we know, on a map, where Low Winter Sun takes place. The third kind of setting is called cultural setting, and it is concerned with the attitudes, beliefs, and values of where a story is set. A story set in the United States tends to have attitudes and beliefs that we find familiar and can understand. A story set in the dictatorship of North Korea, though, would have a very different set of attitudes and beliefs. Cultural setting can be a difficult setting to analyze, especially if you're not careful to avoid stereotyping. But in our example scene, in the convenience store, we see Detective Khalil trying to get a local store owner, who is also a person of Arabic descent, to talk to her about a dead body found in the neighborhood. He treats her rudely based on her gender, because this character has certain beliefs about the way a woman should behave. The cultural setting for this scene, then, is one of extreme religious conservatism. Finally, we have historical setting. The historical setting has to do with the time period where a story takes place. Is it modern? Is it set in the past? Is it futuristic? Don't be fooled by the phrase historical. That doesn't mean that the story always takes place sometime in history. The historical setting for the show Star Trek, for instance, would be the future. Again, we have an easy one. Low Winter Sun takes place in the modern day. We know this based on the technology we see, which includes all the common technologies we use every day: cars, cell phones, computers, and so on. And that's it for setting. Of the 5 elements of story, setting might be the easiest to categorize and understand, but that doesn't make it any less important than the other categories. The setting has a huge impact on the way a story is told, and how it's perceived by the audience. This has been Disobedient Minds, proudly brought to you from Western International High School in Detroit, Michigan.